Hi, we're back again, and we covered the different types of sculpture in the previous Camtasia video. But now on the second one, I want to cover the methods of creating sculpture. How does this sculpture arrive at the point where it is permanent or can stay outside or will last for many thousands of years? So we want to look at it. But first, there are four types of sculpture that we talked about earlier. High relief, don't forget low relief. High relief was when it comes off the wall. Low relief, where it's raised slightly, or what we call bas relief, BAS relief, in which it is slightly, there's a line in the recessed area. Then we said the big one was sculpture in the round, and that's anything that we can walk around. Sculpture in the round, it's 360 degrees, and we can look at it from many different perspectives. And then the last type of sculpture we talked about was light sculpture. Light sculpture giving the illusion of volume. But now we want to talk about the ways in which we create that sculpture. How is it created? When we use materials like wood and metal and marble and wire and glass and steel, paper even, plaster, granite like the Egyptians used, limestone. When we use these materials, there are certain methods in which we create all this sculpture. And basically, there are four. So I want you to make note of the four. Look at the handout. Look at this second lecture, the methods of creating sculpture. The first one is modeling. Modeling is creating sculpture using a manipulative material, such as clay or snow or something you can manipulate. Some artists use wax. The African artists use wax, as we will see shortly, in their casting process. So it's subtracted. According to an artist's creative efforts, you can take material and move it around. That's what we call modeling. Then we have assemblage. Assemblage is the second way of creating sculpture. When you see a car, it isn't a single piece of metal. It has been assembled. One's jacket, clothes, furniture, all these things are assembled. And there are many pieces of sculpture, chairs, lights. They've been assembled. So it's assembled by sometimes gluing, or welding, or pasting, nailing objects together to make a whole. Then the third way of creating sculpture, which we're going to see momentarily, is what we call casting. We create a mold, either in wax or in clay or in some material that's manipulative. But then what we have in mind is to make it into bronze or metal or plaster or permanent material. So how does it get to become a piece of iron, as we have seen in many pieces of sculpture outside? So we want to show you that method. The Africans really perfected it. We call it the lost method of casting. And then last, which is the most difficult way of creating sculpture, and that is the elimination of subject matter through carving. Now, three of these, modeling, assemblage, and casting, are what we call additive methods of creating sculpture. You add to something in order to create it. You assemble, you model, you put and add to it. But the last one, carving, is what we call a subtractive process. And that's when we cut away. And once it's gone, it's the most difficult. And we remember Michelangelo used carving. So let's just look at this a bit and see. Here's an example of high relief, which was probably carved from the back. Here we have bas relief from the Egyptians, in which it was chiseled, but the lines were chiseled into the granite, and thus when you make a line, you create a shadow, and thus we have bas relief. Then we have a famous work by Augusto Rodin. It's called The Thinker, and we're very familiar with this piece, but this has been cast in bronze. It can be outside because it is metal, and we want to look at a work of art and say, okay, how was that created? It was created by casting. And then Michelangelo's David, as we studied earlier this semester, that was carved from a single block of marble. So therefore, it was a subtractive process. Had Michelangelo made any mistakes with the hands or the arms, it would have been destroyed because it's a subtractive process. The West African tribes used to cut many and carve many pieces of sculpture from trees. So most of them tend to be vertical. And then Paul Jacobson did this Alfa Romeo Ferrari car, in which he assembled that and put it together. This probably, because it's outside, this is Henry Moore's work. If you go to the Museum of Modern Art and you go out into the garden, you will see this work. And it's been there for some 40 years. So it was cast so as to make it permanent. And then, of course, this Mercedes was assembled. You just didn't have one piece of metal. Each piece, and many times you've seen on television, the assembly line at General Motors. Other forms that have been assembled or modeled, for example, plastic is something that's used to model just about anything. Matter of fact, they came up with a three-dimensional printer, and it generates plastic. Here we see these brooms, and there are three words that sculptors use, but artists, especially industrial artists, use. It's called form follows function. It's designed to do what it has to do. So a mop or a brush is designed to move material, and thus it looks the way it is supposed to be. The chair or the bench that you see is functional, and yet it is a work of art. It has been assembled. The chandelier, it has been assembled. This house and this balcony and that chandelier in the balcony has been assembled. The chandelier on the left, and then, of course, the cabinet on the right. Expert carpentry, but both have been assembled. Now, I'm going to give you 40 different ways in which, or different pieces of sculpture. And I want you to take a piece of paper. I want you to, even in a Word document, and I want you to number from 1 to 40. This one, I want you to call it methods of creating sculpture. So after each one, for example, this is number 1. I'll give you that one. It was carved in wood. That was the method that was created. I'll give you 2. Number 2, the one on the left was carved out of marble, and on the right as well. So what you would do is to just put down 1 to 40 and then answer, how was it created? And that'll be our assignment that you will complete and submit almost as a quiz. And it's almost impossible for you not to get an A in that. So let's start with each of them. Here's number 1, which I gave you. 2, and you can go back and look at this over and over again. 3, 4. And here we see the lost wax method of creating sculpture. See how the one on the gray up the A, that's gray. That's probably wax. So they carve it in wax and then they put clay over it. And they leave a hole in the top and a hole in the bottom. Then they subject it to heat. Look at item E. And as they subject it to heat, the wax comes out. It melts away. And it comes out of the bottom hole, leaving the top. Then they take it and they do molten, or they get gold or metal, and they put it in a liquefied form and pour it in. And then they let it dry. And then when it's dried, they can take almost a hammer and knock the clay from around it. But inside, you have a cast piece of permanent sculpture. And when the core is removed, you have that metal piece of sculpture. That's what we call casting. So you should be able to notice this solid gold mask that was made some 3,000 years ago, Tutankhamun's mask, that was cast. That's all you put next to that number. How was it done? Number 5. How can it be outside? How was it done? Another piece by Rodin. Seven. Just one word. How was it done? 8. How was it done? 9. And this is one that's quite intriguing because you had to create a mold. And the sculptural presentation is more than one figure. How was it created? This was an easy one. We talked about this one for a long time in our studies. Piece done in Greek classical times. How was it created? Number 13. You can see the marble there. Here's Queen Ty. Here are masks. Number 15. 16. I just want one word or the explanation of the method in which it was created. How did they create that chandelier up there? Or the building with the beautiful open arcade? What kind of relief is this? How was it created? Again, how was it created? The earlier series, you talked about what kind of sculpture it is. But now I'm only interested in you writing next to that 20, how was it created? It's outside, so obviously it was what? Here's a relief piece. And look at this granite piece. from ancient Egypt. Now one would think it was cast, but this was carved. I'll give you that answer. The left is different than the right. The left, but both probably are carved. How was it created since it's outside? This is called earth art, where they move art around to create an art form. So, on this one, I'll give you the answer because it's very interesting. It would be accomplished by modeling. 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Egyptian piece. It's lasted for 3,000 years. Michelangelo emerging from captivity. This piece, how was it created? It's all I want. How are these pieces created? You can choose two and just write on 35, 36. I didn't mean to confuse you. I would add 37. Then we go to 38. 39. How was it created? The methods. Was it modeled? Was it assembled? Was it cast? Or was it carved? And this is the last one. Was it carved, modeled? Looks like a big giant snowman, which means it was modeled. When summer comes, this piece of sculpture is gone. So let's just check that again, play the tape over again, this digital video. But we're looking for methods, your knowledge. You have to demonstrate your knowledge of how the piece of sculpture was created.